Welcome to Creep Night. The last time we saw Dan in the episode, Tight Squeeze, he was being placed into a bottle by the Smiling Man. We're going to meet a man on a search for more souls. Maybe, if we're lucky, we won't get put in his collection. The Smiling Man pushed open a door that led to a slightly dark cave that smelled somewhat musty. He walked up to a desk and opened up a tattered brown leather book. He wrote the name Dan G inside it. Looks like you'll do nicely with the others, Danny boy. Smiling Man took the bottle with Daniel inside to the cupboard. He opened the door. Dan could see all kinds of bottles labeled with names and years, with people trapped inside of them. While the Smiling Man put him on the shelf and left the cave, Dan began to look around. The bottle next to him contained a young lady with long red hair. She sat there crying. Hey, can you hear me? Dan shouts at the lady in the other bottle, but she just looks at him and shushes him. I hear you. The lady looked nervous and scared. Dan kept trying to question her, but she stopped responding to him. He looked to his left and saw another jar. This time, there was an older man who looked like he was in his 60s, just standing there looking at Dan. Hey, mister! Do you know where we are? What is this place? We're in his lair. Whose lair? You know, the Smiling Man. You mean the guy who stuck me in this jar? Who else, kid? Well, what does he want with us? It all depends on what you wished for. What are you talking about? What do we wished on? Yeah, for example, I wish to be young and handsome again. I played this game. Played and I lost. Tell you, George, I hate getting old. Seems like everything hurts. I can't do much anymore. Welcome to old age, Jimmy boy. I wish I could go back to being young. Don't we all, Georgie boy? Don't we all? I'm serious. I'd give anything to be young again. Ah, come on. You don't mean that. As God is my witness, I sure as hell do. As George walked his way, shaking his head and laughing, he held open the door for a tall man with a large grin on his face. He was dressed all in black, almost like he was from the 1900s, with a tapered black long coat and a top hat. He walked over to Jim. Hey, you sport, did I hear you correctly? Did you say you wish you could be young again? Yeah, I did wish that, but I know it'll never happen. Smiling Man smiled just a little bit wider. And what if I told you I could grant you a wish? Oh, I'd say you're crazy. Crazy, huh? How about you just watch this? The Smiling Man grabbed an old cat and brushed his hand across it. A bright yellow light flashes quickly and the cat turned from old to a young kitten. Jim stared with his jaw dropped wide open.
Oh my god, you can actually do it! Why, yes, I can, as you just saw. Well, won't you do that for me, please? Well, I could. What do you want in return? Oh, I just want to play a little game. That's all? It's just a simple game. Okay, a deal.
Oh, yeah. There's just one more thing. What's that? I'll just need you to sign this here piece of paper. Smiling Man pulled out a long piece of paper from his coat and with a pen handed it to Jim. As Jim began to read the paper, he paused. What's this about a soul? What's a soul but an intangible thing you can't even see? It's not much for you to be young for eternity. You wouldn't miss it. As Jim takes up the contract and signs, the Smiling Man's grin grows that much wider. Excellent. Now, about the game. Let's play war with this here deck of cards. Jim had agreed because he was very good at the game and figured that he would win. They sat down at a table and began to play. At first, the game seemed to be going Jim's way, but towards the end, he started to lose his cards. When all of his cards were lost, the Smiling Man's smile grew so wide that his teeth began to glow as white as snow. Oh, now ain't that just a shame?
What do you mean?
You lost the game.
So?
Now, didn't you read the fine print?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, the fine print says if you lose, I get your soul.
You said there was no such thing as a soul.
I didn't say there's no such thing as a soul. I said you wouldn't miss it. The Smiling Man reached into his pocket and pulled out a long glass bottle. And that's when Jim began to shrink. As soon as he was small enough, the Smiling Man picked him up and put him inside the bottle.
That's how I ended up here. So he tricked you too. Yeah, that's about right. Has anyone ever escaped here? Not that I know of. I've only ever seen people come, not really go.
The lady in the other bottle kept trying to shush Jim and Dan.
Shh, please, he'll hear you. What's her deal? She lost the game just like you and me. But before you arrived, her job set where yours is.
I tell you, Jane, my husband's such a loser. I thought by now he would have gotten that big promotion he was always ranting and raving about. But no. You just gotta give it some time. Give it time? I've waited 7 years. How much longer should I wait? I want to be dazzled. I want to be so filthy rich that other girls are jealous and want to be me. I want to be swimming in dough. Debbie, you gotta come back to reality. It's so unfair. That's life. But hey, I gotta go. Yeah, okay, I'll talk to you later. As Deborah hangs up the phone, she begins to daydream about all of the riches that she desires. It was in her dream that she saw the Smiling Man. Why, my dear, if it's not a rich life you're looking for, huh? Yeah, I wish I was rich. I desire it. Hell, I deserve it. And we should all get what we deserve, right? Well, I can make you very wealthy. That moment in her dream, the room began to fill with money and jewels of every kind. She began to get excited at the sight of all the wealth piling around her. All of this could be yours, if you're willing to do two things. First, sign here on this piece of paper. And second off, you just gotta win the game. Without a moment's hesitation, Deborah signed the sheet of paper without reading it at all. Good. Alright, so let us begin. All you gotta do is guess my name. And lucky for you, you get 3 chances. But once you start, there's no backing out. His smile grew wider as he waited for Deborah to make her first guess. She thought long and hard before she began to reply, but by that point, it was too late. I'm guessing your name is Michael. Wrong. With a little bit of trepidation, Deborah responded. Your name's not Lucifer, is it? It's a fair guess, but no. Last chance. 2 bad guesses already out. She didn't wait even a second before guessing one final name. Austin, by any chance? Within a second, the room began to go black as the grin on the smiling man's face grew to encompass the entire space. She felt like she was falling down, until she landed inside of a glass jar. The smiling man stooped over and picked up the jar as he said, Wrong, dear. Wrong.
And from what I know, that's how she got here. How many people are in here? I had to guess. There are thousands of us.
Jim and Dan kept talking. They heard loud thuds coming in their direction. The cupboard door began to open with a creak. They could see the smiling man in front of them. He had a long bottle in his hands. Dan began to slam his fists against the glass as he shouted, Hey, let us out! I'm afraid I can't do that. After all, you all belong to me.
What are you talking about? I don't belong to you.
Oh, my dear Dan. Don't you remember? You played my game and you lost. Dan began to kick the glass as the smiling man grabbed a jar from the top shelf with somebody in it. Dan could see the smiling man walk over to a giant pot with boiling liquid in it. To his horror, he saw the man dump the person into the liquid.
What's he doing? Every once in a while, he empties one of these jars into there. To make some kind of potion he uses to trick unsuspecting people. Don't worry, you won't die, but every time he does it, you lose even more of yourself. We've got to find a way out here. There's no way I'm going to become part of some potion. But there's no way out of here, kid. I've been trying for years to escape this hellhole.
Dan slumped down. He sat there thinking of a way out. It was clear the glass was too thick and hard to try and bust his way out. The base of the jar was long and narrow. Dan took off his jacket and tried to throw it up at the hole, but the jacket never reached the top.
It's no use, kid. I've tried. I can't just sit here and do nothing.
The smiling man returned to the cupboard and put the bottle back. The person inside looked pale, almost as if he had aged 100 years. They were dressed in a Victorian red dress. She also wore a black bonnet, which covered her graying hair. The smiling man looked down at Dan again and flicked the jar.
You son of a bitch!
Dan shouted as he covered his ears. The smiling man chuckled as he picked up the jar and brought Dan over toward the boiling liquid. Ain't you just so feisty? I think after a little dip in this here potion, some of that feistiness might wash away. The smiling man began to tip the bottle over, and Dan began to slide to the neck of the bottle. He tried to catch himself, but it kept sliding down. He would have to time it just right to catch the lip of the bottle. What he would do if he managed to get away from the smiling man remained to be determined at this point. Jim from the other bottle watched nervously as he saw Dan sliding down the bottle. When Dan fell out of the hole, he grasped tightly to the lip of the bottle. Enraged by Dan's actions, the smiling man, 10 times Dan's size, grimaced. He began to shake the bottle in hopes that Dan would let go and fall inside the pot of boiling hot liquid. Dan clung tighter and began to try to get his footing, and when he did, he managed to jump from the bottle, away from the boiling liquid, and into the smiling man's coat. The smiling man let out a scream and let the bottle fall, where it crashed to the floor in a million pieces. He pounded his fists against the jacket, trying to splat Dan against himself, but Dan slid down to the hem of the smiling man's coat. When he reached the floor, he ran as fast as he could for the cave entrance. The smiling man came running after Dan, but Dan dashed away looking for anything he could use to help trip the smiling man up. Then he got an idea and ran back toward the boiling pot, and he would hope that the smiling man would chase him there. "Hey, asshole, over here! I got you, you little shit!" Dan ran for the boiling pot, and the smiling man chased him. But the boiling man slipped on the broken glass on the floor and flew into the boiling pot of liquid. "Ow!" The smiling man let out a scream as he hit the pot of boiling liquid, and it fell over on him. As Dan watched, the smiling man began to shrink, and Dan grew back to his normal size. "Ow! No!" Dan walked over and picked up the smiling man between his fingers and placed him into an empty jar. He then went and released all of the other trapped people in jars. "You did it, kid. You really did it." I don't think he's going to be tricking people ever again. What you going to do with him? I'm going to make sure he never gets out of that jar. With that, Dan and Jim shook hands and parted ways. As Jim and the other people left the cave, Dan walks over to the jar with a long, wide grin. "It looks like the end for the smiling man. He got what he deserved. Be careful who you try to deceive. It might just turn around and bite you in the ass. Thank you for listening to Creep Night."